In this example, we have this equation for a pendulum. The period t is 2 pi times the square root of L over 9.8. And we're going to rearrange this equation for L. So to start, I'm just going to write that original equation. And then before I actually get to squaring things, I could, but I just tend to like to have the radical by itself. So I'm going to start by dividing each side by 2 pi. And then I have t over 2 pi is equal to square root of L over 9.8. And then I'll square each side. Now when I square the left-hand side, as you'll recall from back to our exponent rules, each individual item needs to be squared. So that would be t squared, but also 2 needs to be squared, which results in 4, and pi needs to be squared, which we can only write as pi squared. So we're squaring each item in that bracket. And then on the right-hand side, I have equal to L over 9.8. So finally, the last thing I'll do is multiply each side by 9.8. And what I would end up with is L is equal to 9.8 t squared over 4 pi squared. And it's not pretty, but it's a perfectly valid equation. Another way we could write this if we wanted to was to divide 9.8 by 4. If you did this, you could get a totally perfectly valid answer to have L is equal to 2.45 t squared over pi squared. That would also be a totally acceptable answer. But the first one is the one I naturally did. And I just thought there's, not a huge improvement in simplification by dividing 9.8 over 4. So lastly, part B, how long should a pendulum be so that it takes exactly 2 seconds for one full swing? Well, now that our equation is rearranged, what's really nice is all we have to do is substitute in that time. So we have 9.8 times the time, which is 2 seconds, divided by 4 pi squared. And so to do this, we'll need to go to our calculator. 2 squared is obviously 4, and then I have 4 pi squared. So I'm going to have to calculate this in my calculator. 9.8 times 4 divided by 4 pi squared. We could make this a little simpler on ourselves and cancel out the 4's. So why don't we do that? That would just be 9.8 divided by pi squared. But just be very careful in your calculator that you do 9.8 divided by pi squared and not 9.8 divided by pi and then square that result. You have to be very careful about that. But when I do this in my calculator, I get 0.99, and I'll round to, let's do 3 decimal places, 9.993 meters. And I know it's meters because we're told that L is in meters in the description of the equation.